final of the Autumn Nations Cup is England and France. Both of these sides unbeaten. England having played three. France have put 2-0. You can say three if you want, but remember that game against Fiji was cancelled, so they've only actually played two. But either way, they are unbeaten. This game is a Sunday game. I'll go through the lineups, which I'll chuck in the description if you guys want to take a look at them now. The recent history between the teams, some of the key stats, and where the predictions are at for this one. It is being called a farce in some circles, although both England and France are, of course, pushing back against the idea that it is a farce. But the number of international caps between these teams could not be much different. England are rocking up with a grand total of 813 caps, whereas France, the whole team, has 68. 68 caps. Remember, France have been a bit hamstrung with the requirement to only field their top players or any players for a limited number of games, so it has meant that Fabien Galtier has had to rotate some guys in. And you look at their lineup, there's a couple of guys on debut, and then many players 1-2 caps. I mean, Dulin at fullback has 30, and the entire team has 68. That kind of tells you a bit about what you need to know about how experienced the French side is. I mean, Launchbury on his own has 68. Ford's got 71, Farrell's got 87, and Young's has got 103. So it's a bit of a contrast. Hopefully it's a better game than it looks like it's going to be on paper. Admittedly, that B team for France last week, I maybe shouldn't be calling them a B team, maybe that's a bit insulting, but they still did a pretty good job over Italy, 36 points to 5, and that was Italy's pretty much strongest team. So that either speaks really good for the depth in in France, or poorly on where Italian rugby is at the moment. Either way, England have absolutely looked the business. They're 3 from 3, 40-0 over Georgia, 18-7 over Ireland, and then 24-13 over Wales. They've been good, and no one's really even looked threatening to them as yet. So we'll see how things go for this one. Eddie Jones has kept things pretty stable. There's not a lot in the way of changes. Mako, Vunipola, George, and Sinckler is the same front row. Itoje and Launchbury the same second row. Curry, Underhill, and Billy Vunipola is the same back row. So it's the same forward pack for England going into this one. There's been a little bit of criticism over Eddie Jones's selections when you've seen, Wales have named a different team each week, and the French have been forced to change their players. Ireland's been shifting guys around quite a bit. Scotland has played multiple guys. Some stability there, but they've also mixed things up a bit, whereas England have kept things relatively steady, I would say. I would have to have a look at the stats on the number of players used. I think the Italians have tried to keep things pretty steady as well. But it's not like they're using this competition as a chance to blood a whole bunch of new players. Obviously, Willis got his first cap, and Robson's been getting some minutes, but overall it's been pretty similar to the team that played at the World Cup. The backs, it is still Youngs and Ford. A whole bunch of caps between those two guys. Farrell and Slade in the midfield. Farrell is captain. May and Watson are the wings. So Watson replaces Joseph, who I think's got a calf injury, so not available for this one. Daly's at 15. So apart from Joseph being replaced by Watson, it's pretty much the same team that started last week. Cowan-Dickie, Genge, Stuart are the replacement front rowers. Hill and Earl are the replacement lock and loose forward. They've shifted away from the 6-2 split this week and back to a more traditional 5-3. So 3 backs on the bench are Robson, Malins, and Marchant. So that means Willis pretty much drops out of the side, and Malins is the guy who benefits. Also, Joe Marchant is back in. He essentially takes Watson's spot in the 23 jersey because Watson's getting the start. So that's the England lineup. Pretty familiar. The French lineup, again, not so much. Half of these guys I was very vague on last week. Some of these guys I've seen get their first cap last week against Italy, which was good to see. Collingar is the loose head. He's on his second cap. Pierre-Louis, he's like 23 years old. He's into the 23 at hooker, and Aldegheri is continuing on at tight head. Gerasi will be on his second cap, and Pesenti is there. So that's the same second row as last week, if I'm not mistaken. Woki is still there at number 6. Jelenic moves from 8 to 7 because Tolofua comes in at 8, and he's on his debut. Makalu means he drops to the bench because he was in the 7 jersey last week. Baptiste Serrant is another guy who's having to drop out of the 23 due to the limited number of games he can play. So Coulot is on at number 9. He is captain. Jalibert is still there at number 10, and he is one of the more experienced guys with a whopping 7 caps. But I suppose it's good to build some experience if Intermark is unavailable. Danty, I was pleased to see him last week. He is a big unit, so I look forward to seeing a bit more of him with ball in hand. Moefana comes in at 13. He's in for Barak, who was maybe a bit quiet last week. Moefana will be on his second cap. Raka comes in for Thomas, who is also out with the restrictions on the number of caps. Raka is pretty familiar. One of the more familiar guys, I guess, maybe more from Champions Cup. Villière is on the left wing, and he was lightning last week, so good to see him get his second cap. And Dulin is going to be maybe the key guy in this whole French lineup, because we know how much England like to kick the ball, and the Italians kicked the ball a lot last week, and Dulin was just everywhere. So it'll be pleasing to see if he's able to kind of keep things safe and secure at the back for France. The winning or losing of the game, or at least how close or not this game is going to be, may largely depend on some of the work that he does at the back, mopping up whatever gets kicked through to him. Movaka, Neti, and Antonio are the forward reserves in the front row. Ducat is going to get his debut if he comes on. Makalu, like I mentioned, drops to the bench. Basie, Carbonell, and Barassi are the back reserves. So yeah, it's definitely not as familiar French team compared to the English one, but I'm more familiar with these guys than I was a week ago. Anyway, last week, England, and there's been a bit of talk about the whole boring game thing, which I did a video about that the other day. I do not buy into whatsoever. England made 44 kicks, 15 of them by Youngs, 14 by Ford. So those are the guys who you need to look out for. They were keeping the Welsh backs under all kinds of pressure. But like I mentioned, Dulin is no slouch in that area. But France actually made 53 kicks against Italy. So they're quite happy to play that game. But they're up against some of the best in the business at it in terms of this English lineup. So, yeah, France tend to kick more from 10 than other teams. England, man, their set piece has been solid. Their breakdown work has been solid. Curry and Underhill, Itoje getting turnovers for fun. Maybe the handling is one area that they would be looking to improve compared to last week. But, man, their line-out's been solid. Their scrum's been solid. They've been just a cut above thus far. Will the French be able to unlock the English defence is a big question, because that's one thing teams have really, really struggled with thus far. It took a bit of magic last week for Wales to get their try, and they didn't have a whole lot of opportunities either. But there's certainly some attacking talent in the French lineup, so we will see. We're missing the magic of Thierry Thomas, so who knows. England are big-time favourites. The bookies over here in New Zealand have got them by 17 points, which is a pretty whopping total. Rugby forecast algorithm, which doesn't take into account players. Remember, it's more team-on-team. So it doesn't take into account that it's 813 to 68 caps. But they've got it by 10. England by 10. Average score over the last 5 games between these two teams, which is a 3-2 split, so it's pretty tight, is 25-18 to England. But England at Twickenham proved very, very difficult for France to get over the hill, man. The last game was 24-17 in the Six Nations. That was in France. That was their win to France. So Eddie Jones will be looking to kind of correct that blip. But as I said, it's a much different French team. And the last time France got a win over England in England was 2007. So that's a bloody long time ago. But the fact that we're living in a world where there's no big crowds cheering on their teams, maybe it's a good as chance as any, but you'd much rather see a French lineup full of their big guns rather than the second stringers. But in Sportsman, you never know what is going to happen. So we will see how this one goes. Andrew Brice is the ref. Let's hope he is not a major talking point after this one. Let's hope it's about what the guys do on the field. But yeah, you guys let me know what you reckon about this one. Do you buy into the idea that it is a farce with this vast difference in experience in the sides at international level? Or do you think these French guys, maybe going into this one, knowing that they are massive underdogs, will be able to kind of play with a bit of flair and without that kind of extra bit of pressure on them? I don't know. You guys let me know your thoughts. England Rugby Store is having a 10% off for Christmas. So if you're looking for England rugby gear, I'll put a link in the description for their store, maybe just in time for Christmas. Autumn Nations Cup champions, maybe. We will see on Sunday, Monday morning over here in New Zealand. So I'll be going to work a bit bleary-eyed, I am sure. But anyway, you guys let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.